Scary movies. I reckon there's enough scary things in real life, but I have learned a few basic giveaways that people in scary movies just don't ever seem to get the hang of. If you watch them, take note of these things. First of all, people always go off alone. Really? What's wrong with staying together? Women always go off alone in the middle of the night, preferably in a long flowing nightgown that no one ever wears these days. For some strange reason, ghosts always dress in Victorian attire. No one knows why. When being chased, people will run past a perfectly good open front door and run up the stairs. It makes no sense, but that's what they'll do. No one ever does a house inspection before buying a creepy old mansion. Wouldn't you think they'd discover the hidden locked room, or that maybe there was a problem in the basement if they did a house inspection? No one ever does. 2 words: cell phone. Teenagers are glued to their cell phones, except in the middle of the night in a scary movie. Then they don't have any cell phone anywhere near. And finally, people will persist in ignoring all health and safety codes and going into abandoned buildings. It's just asking for trouble. For a time and place that is supposed to be rational, we are really good at being irrational. Now, I don't know if demons actually exist, but at the risk of being accused of being irrational, I suspect that they do. But probably they are quite different from what we think of in our imagination. And they're certainly very different from anything that shows up in the movies, where they have all power and can do all kinds of things. But what I have experienced from a purely subjective point of view is that there have been times when I have felt myself in the presence of tangible evil, and there has been no human being present. Usually I find out later that it is a place where something dark has happened. Sometimes I don't find out at all, but I just have to get away from that place. My current dogs have no spiritual discernment whatsoever. They are happily clueless. But my former dog, Zach, had an uncanny ability to sense when something wasn't right. It was rare, but there were occasions when he would physically get between me and another person and growl and bark. Now, if you knew Zach, a kid could sit on him and play ride horsey back and he would do nothing. He was the gentlest dog ever. So if Zach growled, I paid attention. And if I found out anything later, it always confirmed that there was something really seriously wrong with that person. On one occasion, he went ballistic, barking his head off at a corner of a room where nothing was. But we later found out that that room had been used by spiritualists. So I don't know what's there and what's not there. A member of this congregation once had a problem in her home where things kept opening and closing without permission and moving. We came, we prayed over the house, and it all stopped. Because that is the reality. The reality is we have Christ's authority. And no matter what it is that we can't define, we don't need to be afraid of it, because we are in Christ Jesus. Now, there are, of course, the human kind of demons that we deal with, principally addiction and mental illness. And Jesus dealt with all kinds of demons, physical and spiritual. There are many times when we'll read a story where it looks like he cast out a demon, when really he was healing epilepsy or some other disorder. But think about what mental illness, epilepsy, or severe autism would look like in the first century. Everything we understand now from an organic level would look like demon possession to the people at the time. Even in the present day, in Bali and Indonesia, people consider their mentally ill family members possessed by demons, and this is what they do to them. They chain them up. They cage them. These poor people lie in their own feces. They're barely fed. Sometimes they lose the ability to walk. They have been chained in the same position for so many years on end. This happens in other places in the world too. It is horrendous the way the mentally ill are treated because no one understands what's going on with them. And this is what they do. And this is what this man who we meet had suffered from. He had been chained up, hand and foot, under guard, just like these people. And he managed to break free, and who can blame him? But then he wandered amongst the tombs, naked and alone, until he met Jesus. Luke, Mark, and Matthew all tell this story, although Luke and Mark refer to the Gerasenes and Matthew the Gadarenes. Both were small cities, both roughly in the same location, a few miles from the Sea of Galilee, where the pigs were drowned. But in fact, it's probably Matthew that was right. It's probably the Gadarenes because that city was a little closer and it had land that went all the way to the shoreline. Regardless of the name, these were Gentile cities. And it is very rare that we see Jesus go into Gentile territory, exclusively Gentile territory. Jesus came by boat across the Sea of Galilee. When he stepped ashore, the man met him. He was naked and deranged, and yet something in him recognized Jesus. He may have been mentally ill, but also suffering from some kind of spiritual affliction because he fell at Jesus' feet and shouted at the top of his lungs, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God?" And most people who are just suffering from schizophrenia do not recognize a spiritual reality. He said, "I beg of you, don't torture me." And the reason he said this is because Jesus had already begun to command the impure spirits to leave him. These spirits not only recognized Jesus, they recognized that Jesus had authority over them. And so Jesus asked the man, "What is your name?" And he responded, "Legion." A legion is a Roman unit of 6,000 soldiers. This was not the man's name. This was the demon's name. This man had been oppressed and sick for so long that he had lost his own identity. The demons who called themselves Legion then begged Jesus not to order them to go into the abyss. What is the abyss? We don't know. You're going to find out there lots of websites and preachers who are going to give you all kinds of details about what the abyss is. It's all made up. We don't have that information. There's a lot of very ancient documents that are just as legendary as the legends that are written today. It is far more honest for us to just say, I don't know. Abusan is Greek. It's sometimes translated bottomless pit. The only thing we really can say is that the abyss is like timeout for demons. It's isolation. It's being put in a place where you cannot do anyone any harm because you are far away from anyone and anything. If we can even speak of temporal location. And they didn't want to go there. And so they asked if they could go into the pigs instead. And surprisingly, Jesus said, yes. But the force of so much evil energy entering these animals drove them to plunge off of a steep bank and drown in the Sea of Galilee. We don't know if Jesus anticipated this, but from a Jewish point of view, pigs were unclean, demons are unclean. They kind of went together. And as far as what happened to the demons after that, we have no idea, because we do not really understand how the spiritual realm works. The people of Gerasa or Gadara were not happy when they discovered what happened. Those tending the pigs ran off to report what had happened. The pigs were dead, and because they were already dead and not slaughtered for meat, they were then useless as meat. They were drowned. It was a total loss. The man was sitting at Jesus' feet, clothed and in his right mind. The one that they had rejected as worthless and written off was cured. But now what? It is just possible that no one cared about this man. No one cared what happened to him. The pigs were more valuable than the man. After all, healing and delivering this man had just caused a lot of complications for the people of this town. They already had the routine down, after all. Chain him up, occasionally feed him, and ignore him. That's what you do. Now, they would be faced with a man who is in his right mind, who they had treated despicably. Talk about awkward. What would they say to him? Oh, gee, I'm really sorry we chained you up, kicked you, and starved you, left you out into the elements. You know, it wasn't our fault. What do you say to somebody who is a whole, strong, healthy person who previously you had written off? Do you say sorry? Do you walk away and pretend that you had nothing to do with it? We don't know how the townspeople reacted. We don't know anything about this man's family and how they responded. But here he is, free. But this cure had cost someone a lot of money, and the townspeople were afraid. What was Jesus going to do next to turn their lives upside down? And so they begged him to leave. And he did so. But the man asked, "Can I go with you?" And Jesus said no, and sent him home and told him to tell everyone what God had done for him. Was it demons? Was it mental illness? Was it both? Clearly some potent form of spiritual evil was involved, and that evil had been banished by Jesus. Evil cannot stand against Jesus. But clearly also this man was restored to his right mind. So if he was mentally ill, he was healed. The man had been afflicted by a legion of demons and experienced the same power is available to us today. But when confronted by evil, we instinctively want to flee. It's why horror movies work so well. And besides which, we give horror movies a lot more power. But just for a moment, I want you to imagine yourself into the middle of that poltergeist movie. Be one of the characters. Be Jesus. The movie would end very quickly. By telling the poltergeist to knock it off, binding it and sending it away, all's well, leave the house, all done. There would not be any power given to the evil. We can do that. We have the protection and authority of Jesus. There is no form of spiritual evil that can harm us. Our enemy might prowl like a lion. Our enemy might roar like a lion. But our enemy is a caged lion. It cannot touch us. In my experience, confronting spiritual evil as a Christian is a very similar skill to that of dealing with a raging 4-year-old. Be calm, be authoritative, remember that you're the adult, don't surrender your authority, don't try to negotiate, decide what the terms are, and insist on them. Period. One of my favorite songs is Tom Petty's I Won't Back Down. Now, he probably did not mean these in a spiritual way, but that's how I sing them. Well, I won't back down. No, I won't back down. You can stand me up at the gates of hell, but I won't back down. No, I'll stand my ground, won't be turned around, and I'll keep this world from dragging me down. Gonna stand my ground, and I won't back down. When we stand firm in Christ, we do not back down in the face of spiritual evil. We go on the aggressive in prayer. We respond with authority and mercy. We have God's total protection. And a real Christian in the middle of a horror movie turns it into a comedy. Because a real Christian would say, really? Seriously? I don't think so. And clean things up very quickly. But even without having to resort to an exorcism, many people battle demons. Sometimes we don't want to let them go because they are familiar demons. The children of alcoholics often marry alcoholics. It's what they know. Self-destructive behavior might be tearing our lives apart, but it's familiar pain. It's the chaos that we know. Getting healthy can be very scary. But whether the demons are spiritual or psychological, God has all power to deliver and to heal. I might be going a little out on a limb here by saying that I really doubt that anyone here in this congregation is suffering from demon possession. I think I would know, even without my dog around to growl and bark. I think you're safe. But everyone can be oppressed. Everyone can experience emotional and psychological oppression. And Jesus is strong enough to counter it all. He has all authority, and he has given us all authority. No one ever need live in bondage because Jesus has come to set us free. Amen.